today. It's been a great pleasure to welcome you to the university and to engage in this conversation with you.
The conference that we so eagerly await to unfold over the coming 2 days is held in honour of Fethullah Gulen, from whom the Australian Catholic University Chair in the Study of Islam and Muslim-Catholic Relations, established in 2007, takes its name. For those who may not know Fethullah Gulen is probably the modern era's most profound and most respected Islamic scholar. So you may have read in the synopsis, and this is straight out of the synopsis, that this event for Fethullah Gulen, dialogue between Christians and Muslims, is imperative, not only because of what followers of these monotheistic religions have in common, but also because of their shared responsibility to make our world a more safer place and a more peaceful place. According to Gulen, dialogue is a call for intellectual encounter such as what we're about to experience over the coming 2 days.
Even though Melbourne might be, in its own way, a unique interfaith laboratory, we know that the theme of this conference has implications for the world in which we live, which is by no means overestimating the potential of our discussion and our listening. As the Archbishop of Melbourne's Vicar for Ecumenism and Interfaith Relations, I'm most happy to bring his greetings to this conference, and with him pray God's wisdom both attend us during these 2 days of sharing and listening, and remain with us also into the future in the work we do to struggle patiently and thoughtfully to build a world together that is both just and peaceful. Inshallah.
Now, this conference will address another challenging topic. Just as violence was addressed at the Abraham Lecture in 2004, another challenging topic, namely ethics, where interfaith dialogue needs to occur in a searching and candid fashion. I'm delighted to see this conference taking up such an important topic. The conference brings together an array of distinguished scholars, both from Australia and especially from overseas, who will add and address over the next 2 days an interesting variety of topics.
And finally, the stage of bearing testimony is reached. At this point, we as believers, we have to propose to society moral, ethical values through our witness, through our service to society. So we are committed to bear this witness, and we have to do that with sincere esteem. And this fact demands and requires a common effort to continue to weave these relationships which are so necessary in our world, with its changes in the socio-political and cultural realm, as well and in perception of others.
But like all the great questions in life, the answers may not be as simplistic or as clear-cut as we would like them to be. Nevertheless, as scholars, as theologians, as people of faith, we will endure in this search, we will go on this, engage in this pursuit for the truth. And today we will turn to the great religious traditions to see how especially Christianity and Islam offers us glances into these perspectives of truth.
I think that if Muslims and Christians are to be in dialogue about the living of a good life, they need to think together, which means to converse, about the nature of religious belief as well as the nature, the character of the good life. Indeed, reflections on the former are an essential element in reflections on the latter.
I hope the Abrahamic religions and the other religions which try to bring salvation or enlightenment to the souls of not only to the individuals but also soul of the community at large. When we think that it is individual who have the soul and the community is devoid of the soul, that lies the problem.
In medical contexts such as come into view when we discuss euthanasia as an alternative to palliative care and the like, we often speak of the sanctity or sacredness of life. This must be a metaphor, I think, or a usage by extension, and I've come to think it somewhat odd, really, in an ethical context. God is sacred. The consecrated elements of the Eucharist are sacred. Scriptural text is sacred text. Clearly what the extension of the language of sacredness to human life in a medical end-of-life decision setting evokes is the resonance of something towards which sacrilege is possible and to be avoided at all costs.
Islamically speaking, or theologically speaking, life is one of the most prominent attributes of God. Ever living and giver of life, Al-Hayy and Al-Muhyi, frequently mentioned in the Quran. The attribute of life has a priority over other attributes because others, such as his power, his will, his knowledge, cannot imagine it without the existence of life. So life is really very precious and important because it comes directly from God. Since life is the comprehensive attribute of God, Islam places great importance on the value of life. Life, like Christianity, briefly, humans are not only God's creation, but after being fashioned from clay, God breathed his own spirit into human beings to distinguish them from other creatures.
An open dialogue emphasising what is shared in common rather than concentrating on our differences. Now this I call the religious impulse at its best. But 8 years ago, in November 2003, I found myself caught up as an observer in a legal case where I saw the religious impulse at its worst. A religious vilification case expected to be over in 3 days dragged on for more than 5 years. It was a landmark case where the charge was religious hate speech. The Islamic Council of Victoria versus Catch the Fire Incorporated, which I wrote about in my book, The Jihad Seminar. Now, I use this conflict as an example that explores the limits of religious tolerance in the 21st century and as an illustration of the boundary between freedom of speech and freedom from religious vilification.
A nuanced and rich reflection on dialogue is found in Pope Paul VI's encyclical letter, Ecclesiam Suam, which was published actually during the Second Vatican Council. It appeared in 1964. The Pope says, and this is rather striking, the Church makes itself conversation. Now I'll just go back and look at the conventional English translation of that, which reads, the Church has a communication to make.
I am going to look at the Quran, the story of the prophets very briefly, how they deal with the aggression when that happened against the religion. Because since the beginning of Islam, according to the Islamic theology, there's a struggle between Tawheed, unity of God, those who believe in God, and those who don't. So how they responded, and what's Gulen's comment on this issue. So the paper has two arguments. The methodology and language used by such radical Muslims contradict with the essence of Islam, though it is done in the name of Islam. And second, I will examine the views of contemporary scholars Fethullah Gulen in regards to the reactionary methods of some Muslims and analyze their proposal of cooperation and collaboration with non-Muslims.
I'm very hopeful for the future in terms of what young people are being able to access through groups like Affinity, which have people who can go and speak in different venues, and I've been involved personally with some of those people. So, and studies of religion classes in public schools as well as schools run by religious groups. I think initiatives like this are really doing a lot to educate a new generation of Australians. So personally, I'm fairly hopeful about that side of things.
In understanding those jurist opinions, we have to consider their circumstances. For a very long while in human history, political alliances coincided with religious alliances. So those jurists, in evaluating their situations and reaching their opinions, when they looked around, every single enemy state to their state or country that was an enemy was also a state that embraced another religion, either Christianity or some other. So there was almost 100% overlap on political alliance and the religious alliance. So some of the opinions that were issued during those times are based on this observation, which was prevalent for many centuries. So we should understand that they may not be able to go above and beyond that perspective and think about times like the 21st century, where there will be democratic countries. They will allow people of different religions to live in peace, respect their religious freedom, don't put them into a second citizen class, and live as a pluralistic society. They could not have possibly envisioned such situations. So their opinions should be understood in their historical context. So what does that mean? That means we have to go back to the Prophet's practice, peace be upon him, and his friends' practice, and try to see a more universalist, more transcending elements, or what I call the spirit of the tradition.
In the first place, let us note the tradition of Catholic teaching about the just war, which began with St. Ambrose and St. Augustine, was developed by Thomas Aquinas, and which has since become a key part of both secular and Christian thinking about the just war. As Oliver O'Donovan has noted in his work, The Just War Revisited, as quoted in Brian Stiltner's and David Clough's 2007 book, Faith and Force, A Christian Debate About War, this traditional teaching about the just war, sometimes called just war theory, is not in fact a theory, but rather a set of proposals of practical reasoning about the legitimacy of armed conflict in some circumstances. Nor is it really about just wars, but more a reflection on how we may enact just judgments even in the extreme case of a theatre of war.
Patriarch Antonius Maguire of the Egyptian Coptic Church observed that freedom of conscience is not so much a right to be claimed for Christians. Instead, he said, it's a universal right, which Christians and Muslims defend together for the common good. He went on to say, a positive laicity would permit an effective and fruitful contribution of the Church and help strengthen the idea of citizenship founded on the principles of equality and democracy for every person in the country.
Before we proceed to find solutions for this problem of how religion can fit into the public sphere, it's best to re-examine this story of religions in society. That is, you'll recognize the sociologist's approach here. How do religions actually function in society, as opposed to how we think they ought to function? So, when we do this, we see that actually religions have changed a great deal since the time of the Enlightenment, over the last 2 centuries. And so have people's relationships to their religions changed considerably. So we refocus our view, then, our concerns from the separation between religion and society, faith and reason, to changes within religions as to the place of religion in those religions, or of the place of reason within religions over the last couple of centuries, and particularly in the last 50 years.
My main contention here is that the existing wisdom and the ways in which much of the discussion about Islam and secularism has happened in Western academic discourse, we need to critically examine it rather than simply reproduce it. And I think this is a first step for a really meaningful dialogue to take place.
At the heart of ethics lies the nafs, the risks or the influence of the human self on the individual. And this permeates through everything. And in our time, it seems that this interest or self-interest seems to dominate our ethics or ethical decisions. At the personal level, what's in it for me? At the society level, what's in it for my race or my ethnicity dominates the thinking. At the international level, it's the national interest becomes the criteria for making ethical decisions.
Muslims and Catholics need to speak with one voice on issues we face together. For example, on euthanasia. Our dialogue needs to study those issues in depth and from every direction, and our voice needs to be loud and clear. And I think ACU and AIS are well placed to discuss these issues from a whole variety of directions. As Father Miguel has said, modern society is becoming increasingly illiterate, very good phrase, and also suffering from what he calls collective amnesia about the past faith. So let us cooperate so that our society might become more humane and more just.